everyone, it's Denise Donahue, the Mortgage Nerd. I am here today with Sean with FRS Credit, and we are going to talk about the 5 major components that make up your FICO score. And today's going to be the first and the biggest, most important one, would you say? So what is that?
So 35% of our credit score has to do with our payment history. Okay, and really it's more than that. It's the presence or lack of derogatory information on your credit report. So that's a big chunk. That's about a third. So a couple of tips with that is, number one, make sure you pay the bills on time. Don't ever pay anything 30 days late, because when you pay 30 days late, that's when they report it to the credit bureau, and it can drop a credit score, 100 points or so.
Wow.
Also, any sort of collection activity or anything like that, it's going to impact that 35% bucket. So that's the biggest area of credit, keeping up with your credit and making sure that you have good credit.
So number 2 of the 5 components that make up your FICO score is?
It's really your debt load, okay? It has to do with how much debt do you carry, and really the biggest component of that is your revolving debt, which is your credit cards, okay? If you don't have credit cards, you're gonna score lower. Okay?
Really?
Possibly even 100 or 150 points lower than somebody that does have credit cards. But it's important to know that you wanna use the credit cards the right way. So you want to make sure you keep a very low percentage of utilization of those credit limits. So as an example, if you have a $1,000 credit limit, you want to keep that balance as low as possible. And I say below 10% of the credit limit to maximize your credit scores.
Okay, because sometimes you hear 30%. So is the magic number really 10?
The magic number is as small as possible.
Okay.
30% is where you really start to get movement in your score. But there is nothing magic about keeping it at 30%. I mean, you're going to pay too much interest if you do that. Mm-hmm. So really, it's as low as possible. Okay. So below 10% is a great goal.
So what if you have, because there's some clients that I work with that have a credit card and they've had it for 10 years, but they never use it. Is that working for them at all?
So the way FICO works, it's kind of interesting, is you're going to score a little bit higher with the small balance on your credit card than with the zero balance, okay? The biggest risk with your credit cards and not using them is that the bank may close those for inactivity. So my advice is, if you have credit cards you don't use, do not close them. Stick them in the drawer or in the safe and use them once every 6 months to just buy a tank of gas or a lunch or something, just so that the bank doesn't close those. Because when you close the credit card, it doesn't hurt your credit history today. What it does is it reduces your percentage of utilization. It increases your utilization because you lose that credit limit.
All right, everyone. So number 3 of the 5 components that make up your FICO score, we just learned 1 and 2. 1 was payment history and 2 was debt utilization. Number 3 component that makes up your FICO score is?
It's the length of your credit history.
Okay.
So this is important for a couple of reasons, and FICO looks at it in 2 ways. One is, how old is your credit file? So what's your oldest account? But the second is the average age of your credit file. So that is why somebody who's older like me versus somebody who's young, just out of college or something, if I happen to have a derogatory mark on my credit report, it's gonna hurt me a lot less than it hurts that young person, because they have a very short credit history. Okay, so longer credit history is good. The other thing that impacts this is opening new accounts reduces the average age of your credit file. And so you want to be careful with that, because this is 15% of your score, so it's a pretty big number.
And so closing long accounts would impact that as well?
It won't impact them today.
Okay.
Because a positive account stays on the credit report for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
And so it doesn't hurt your credit history today, but it will in the future.
Okay, so of the 5 components, we're going to talk about the number 4 component that makes up your FICO score. So the 4th component is?
That 4th component is the mix of your credit. Okay. So this is kind of important. It's worth 10% of your credit score, and so that can be about 55 points. Okay. And so you want to have a healthy mix of credit. So you want to have at least 3 credit cards. And
3 credit cards?
And at least 1 installment loan.
Okay.
Because that's a healthy mix. What you're doing is you're telling FICO that you're responsible with multiple types of credit.
Okay.
And then if you have a mortgage, you score even higher. So somebody without a mortgage versus somebody with a mortgage, the person with the mortgage is gonna score higher because they're able to show that they're responsible with multiple types of credit accounts.
So ideal would be like a mortgage, maybe an auto loan or student loan, and then 3 credit cards.
Yeah, minimum of 3 credit cards. Now, I'm not suggesting you go buy a car just to satisfy
Sure.
that, but generally speaking, a lot of people have some form of an installment loan, whether it's a student loan or an auto loan or something like that. So you're just going to score higher if you have a good mix.
Okay, so number 5, there's 5 components that we're learning that make up your FICO score. And so the 5th component, what is that and what percentage of the FICO score does that take into account?
Okay, so the 5th component is new credit, or what I like to say, the hard inquiries.
Okay.
So when you apply for credit, the lender pulls a credit report, and that impacts that bucket of that 10%, which could be worth about 55 points.
Wow.
Okay. And so that is why you don't want to apply for credit unless you absolutely need it. You want to be careful with that. Only apply when you need credit. What's also important with this is checking your own credit does not hurt. So that's a soft inquiry, whereas if you have a lender pull your credit, that's a hard inquiry.
Okay, and how would one go about checking their own credit?
So there's a number of sites online. There's lots of credit monitoring companies. We have one on our website called Identity IQ. We have a special link on there. But you want to be careful with credit monitoring. You want to look at something that provides monitoring for all 3 credit bureaus. A lot of people use Credit Karma. It's not a bad tool, but when you use Credit Karma alone, you're blind to Experian because they only give you TransUnion and Equifax. So you definitely want to monitor your credit, and you want to do it with a company that provides all 3 credit bureaus.